știm noi din vremuri strămoșești, cuvânt de dor și luptă, de doine și povești. Dar dacă astăzi pacea e lege și scut, e pentru că pe lume partidul s-a născut. Dulci cuvinte le-am moștenit în grai, doar bănuiam ce înseamnă, ce tâlcuri au sub strai. Dar dacă astăzi tâlcul de plin l-am priceput, e pentru că pe lume partidul s-a născut. Утреннего в жизни важен первый шаг. Слышишь, веют над страною ветры яростных атак. И вновь продолжает собой, и сердцу тревожно в груди. И Ленин такой молодой, и юный октябрь впереди. И Ленин такой молодой, и юный октябрь впереди. Весть летит во все концы, вы поверьте нам, отцы, будут новые победы, станут новые бойцы. Милости не жди, жизнь для правды не щади. Нам, ребята, в этой жизни только с правдой по пути. И вновь продолжает собой, и сердце тревожно в груди. И Ленин такой молодой, и юный октябрь впереди.
Hello, everybody, and welcome along. I'm just trying to get the lighting right here. There we go. Right. Hello, everybody, and good evening. It is the evening of the 10th of August, 2026. And here we are coming to you fairly late night when it comes to the time in merry old Scotland. But when it comes to American time, maybe we're hitting peak hours. And of course, it is an American subject that is under discussion on tonight's program. So we are currently live on YouTube, on X, on Twitch, on Rumble, and on Substack, of course. You can find us on all of the above platforms. So be sure to subscribe if you have not done so already. Also, if you're interested in following and participating in the Marxist educationals we're doing, they're on the Patreon side. They're also for subscribers on Substack. And we have two currently running. We have Marxist State Theory. We just finished working through the classic Lenin text from 1917, The State and Revolution. We're following it up with one that's almost its direct successor, which is The Proletarian Revolution and the Renegade Kautsky, beginning this week over on the Patreon side. We also have the second week coming up of the Marxist Political Economy course. We're studying Contribution to a Critique of Political Economy. We're on to the second chapter of that this week as well. So two things over there on the Patreon side or the subscriber side of Substack. If you want to get access to that, go over and subscribe. But before we get into the meat of the issue, let's just greet those in the chat so far. We have ACDT, Akhmadovich Nas from Moscow. We have Speedy from Sheffield. We have Walter. We have Callum Roche. We have President Jesus. We have Ben Horst. We have Ekaterina Traskina. We have Caustic Grip. We have Nonzenzi. We have Dmitry Chanish. We have Bertram Clement. We have SDSD. We have Baum from Bolivia. Good to have you with us. We have Davey from the wild northwest of Wales. We have Alex Moore from Fife. We have also Iman Puedama. Motor Jason, Brolin from Seattle, Washington, and just coming into the chat, Jesse Johansson. So be sure to like and share this stream if you have not done so already. And the subject under discussion tonight is, of course, a certain Mr. Tucker Carlson, who, as we all know, is something of a intelligence agency adjacent figure, to say the least, as Vladimir Putin once threw in his face. His father did indeed work for the CIA, and it's fairly likely that he has some kind of interesting relationship with the Central Intelligence Agency as well. And now, we are looking at him because we want to assess the political game that he is playing. And it's important to look at this partially because there is always the chance that some well-intentioned people might get taken in by this act that he's doing, this hint at a third party, this attempt to say that he's leading some sort of breakaway from the Republicans. No such thing is being done here. There will be no Tucker Carlson third party run for the presidency in 2 years' time. That's not enough time to put together a campaign and find a candidate. What I think this is, overall, is an attempt to rebrand the tired, in fact, pretty much exhausted populist so-called insurgency from, from the complete black hole it's fallen into in the second term of the Trump administration, and rebrand it, repackage it, and put J.D. Vance at the head of it, with Carlson being acknowledged as some sort of ideological godfather. basically. That's what I think is being done here. It's going to end up being an attempt to rebrand MAGA again, this time with Vance at the head of it. Whether that will work or not is another question entirely, but it's certainly not going to lead to a third party. Now, we're going to go through this bit by bit and assess this manifesto that Carlson issued in a 90-minute live stream just the other day. So Carlson this wasn't even really a manifesto. Carlson treats the United States as if it was a corporation that has a particular brand that needs reinvention. And that should tell you something immediately. It's not a manifesto in the classical sense. This is not, the American conservative version of the Communist Manifesto. This is a mood piece for disaffected, petty bourgeois American reactionaries. It is an artifact of ideology in the Marxist sense, a picture of the world in which the real relations actually have been turned upside down. Now, let's go through this one point at a time. First point that Carlson brought up, he says that the same rules should apply to presidents, federal agents, and elites like Jeffrey Epstein. And he uses the term Epstein class, accusing this class, so to speak, of enriching itself through the political system. Now, on the surface of this is a populist boilerplate, but the real issue here is the framing of this. The way it's framed, of course, by Carlson, who is by no means against capitalism, as he often says. The problem with sort of inequalities in the law, with untouchable elites, with the law being applied very selectively, isn't, according to Carlson, capitalism and the class system. It is the problem is some corrupt elites, the Epsteins, the ones who got caught, basically aren't playing by the rules. The implication being that the system would be fine if it had more honest public servants, if the police prosecuted a few more Epstein-type figures, etc. So this is a classic petty bourgeois critique, and that it's desperate to say that the house and its foundations aren't rotten. It's just that a few bad people who've moved into it and are making it look bad. So, and also note that the use of the term by Carlson, Epstein class. I've always resisted using this because it's a deliberately imprecise term. Because, well, what is the Epstein class? Because Jeffrey Epstein wasn't in the American ruling class. He was nowhere near rich enough to be in the American ruling class. And he didn't have his own money. He was given money to spend by other people. If you read the reporting into him, he got a lot of money from people like Leslie Wexner, the apparently lunatic, who ran or founded the Victoria's Secrets line. But Epstein wasn't in the ruling class, not even close. He was a functionary, a fixer, an intelligence man, a pimp, all of the above. He was a servant of the ruling class, really. He wasn't in the ruling class himself. Neither really were the people, or a lot of the people who hung out with him. Who were Epstein's primary targets for ensnaring? Some of them were big bourgeois types. Elon Musk is in there. Bill Gates is certainly in there. But a lot of them were people like him, other functionaries. So who is, for instance, the biggest name who's been attached to the Epstein scandal, politically speaking? Well, it's Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, up to his neck in it, more than anyone other than perhaps Trump himself, arguably more than Trump himself. Bill Clinton is a rich man, but he's not in the ruling class. He's a servant of the ruling class. He's a functionary, fundamentally. He made his money being an effective functionary for the American ruling class. And who else is tied up in this? Dozens and dozens of actors, singers, writers, all quite well remunerated people. But I wouldn't call Orlando Bloom a member of the American or British ruling class. He's nowhere near that high profile. He's nowhere near that rich. So the principal people Epstein was bringing into his web were politicians, academics, some think tank types, a couple of the billionaires, but musicians, actors, a real sort of party you don't want to be invited to because it's the worst, least talented hacks in American culture. By the way, Media Twat special for the United States coming in September when the Decline and Fall show comes back for what we're going to call our autumn season. So, the Epstein class is a deliberately vague term. It's there to obscure class relations, not reveal them. And that's why people like Carlson use it. Now, the second point Carlson mentioned was that he wants the United States to be a sovereign nation. And he claimed that it was those wicked old Zionists that pushed the poor innocent United States into the Iran war through, quote, bribery or threat or both. It's neither, in actual fact. He describes foreign lobbying, corporate control of government, and high interest debt as forms of slavery. Now, here is the slipperiness of Carlson, which is that he claims that the United States was pushed into a war with Iran through bribes or threats from wicked old Benjamin Netanyahu, who undoubtedly is a horrendously evil man, and who undoubtedly wanted a war with Iran. Hasn't worked out anything like the way that either Netanyahu or his backers in the United States would have wanted. But who started the war? The war was started by the United States, and the war was not started 6 months ago, or a year ago, or even 3 years ago. It was started in 1979. You can make an argument it was actually started in the early 1950s. But let's start it in 1979. Let's start it with the overthrow of the Shah. Because I've made this point over and over and over again, the American war on Iran began as soon as the Shah fell, and it has not stopped. It is a war that has taken many different forms. It took the form of the Ba'athist regime headed by that incompetent, corrupt gangster Saddam Hussein, who was the willing tool of the US imperialism for many, many years before they turned on him. And a war that killed, depending upon which figures you want to believe, between 800,000 and 1 million people. That one lasted for 8 years. So that was the major first phase. There's other elements to that as well: terrorism, bombing campaigns, all the way through the 1990s, economic sanctions, repeated regime change operations, influencing operations, terrorist and fascist gangs being unleashed inside Iran to murder people, to intimidate people. All of this has been going on constantly for decades. And the latest explosion was merely the coming out into the open of what had been a long-running hybrid war. Now, Trump was stupid enough to believe that whatever the CIA told him, which was likely that, well, if we come out and, well, Mr. President, if we come out and kill that Ayatollah, sorry, I need to pronounce it correctly. Mr. President, if we come out and kill that Ayatollah, we reckon that the population's going to rise up and be chanting your name, sir. Oh, really? I like that chanting. I remember other people chanting. And then I said to Larry Silverstein, etc. But the point is that Trump was crude enough, ridiculous, stupid enough, and tied to the most belligerent, again, rather stupid militaristic elements inside the United States to believe that launching an assassination campaign, killing Ayatollah Khamenei, would be enough to collapse the Islamic Republic of Iran. He was catastrophically wrong on that point. But all of this is an American creation. Yes, the Israelis have a level of involvement in this. Yes, Netanyahu's been agitating for this for years, but one has to ask the question, why has Netanyahu been agitating for it for years? And the reality is that Netanyahu does not just speak for himself, or even a particular clique in Israel. Netanyahu is a political investment made by people who are principally American. That's who his backers are. These are people from the ruling class in the United States. Most of them live in the United States. That's who has funded Benjamin Netanyahu's entire political career. So then the question comes up, well, who is he speaking for? He's speaking for them. He's speaking for the people who he works for, who he's always worked for. And they are mainly people in the United States. So what he represents is in reality partially the ultra-reactionary, foaming at the mouth lunatics in the state of Israel. There's them, of course. But mostly it's Netanyahu speaks for the most aggressive, the most expansionist, the most nakedly imperialist and militaristic elements in the US ruling class itself. This idea that Israel just shoved the United States into a war because, they had pictures of Trump, committing heinous acts with somebody. How many people know that Trump is a heinous bastard? It's not it's not a small number. But the idea that it was Netanyahu got Trump to do this because he's got compromising pictures of him. No. This was the logical outcome of the hybrid war waged by the US imperialists on Iran for many, many decades. It was always going to break out into full open war eventually, and it's gone disastrously wrong. Now, so Carlson is trying to find a way to dress up this defeat, basically, because so far they've lost. They're trying to recover the situation, but so far they are losing ground. And there is a move amongst some of the more smart sections in the American establishment, which Carlson has some links to try and pin the blame for this disaster on Israel and on Trump being compromised. Not that it's the logical outcome of a failed hybrid war on Iran, and that the only move the Americans had left in the end was naked military aggression. So, point 3 in Carlson's manifesto, that he believes that America should rebuild farming, manufacturing, and craftsmanship while rejecting an economy dominated by finance, real estate, speculation, surveillance systems, and weapons. Now, here is where some people might get taken along with this. Because on the surface of it, Carlson appears to be addressing a huge and genuine problem facing the United States. It's not just a problem facing the United States. This is a problem facing all of the imperialist powers. Deindustrialization, of course, is rightly loathed by the American working class. American working class, if they are people in their late 40s or 50s or older, will have seen whole cities wither and die, places like Detroit, places like Gary, Indiana, with deindustrialization just stripping away all of the jobs, the wealth, all of the positive elements of American society being destroyed over the last 4 to 5 decades. Anybody who's seen that will want to believe that there is a solution to that it can be turned around. But so Carlson identifies a problem, which is an economy that is parasitic. But of course, because he's a pro-capitalist reactionary, he has no real conception as to why things are as they are. Why is it that America deindustrialized? Is it just bad decision making, corrupt elites? Is it superficial and short-term chasing of profit? Well, that's part of it. But the unfortunate reality is that this was always going to happen because when America became an imperialist power, this is what's baked into imperialism. And it's been proven to be true in the case of every imperialist power, from starting with the British and, of course, the French and the rest of the European powers, the British being the most degenerated in terms of the ruling class deindustrializing. But the pressure on the ruling class is to, of course, maximize their profits, and ultimately, there's only there is only one solid and consistent way to keep growing profits, and that is to actually stop producing commodities, to move from the production and export of commodities to the production and the export of capital, and move production to elsewhere in the world where labor is more exploitable. And that's the reality as to why America is deindustrialized. It's baked into the very system of American capitalism that people like Tucker Carlson admire so much. So this idea that you're going to be able to get rid of deindustrialization, rebuild farming, well, farming in the United States is suffering the same way that farming in all of the capitalist societies, or all of the imperialist societies, suffers, which is that they invest heavily in. First of all, they invest the agricultural bourgeoisie invest heavily in automation in order to bring down labor costs. Then that doesn't bring down costs quick enough, and so you end up bringing in produce from other areas of the world where the labor is more exploitable. That's what's behind the decline of American agriculture. That and concentration of land ownership, monopolization of land ownership by who? Well, by the same bourgeoisie and that monopolizes everything else. So the problem for American agriculture is that it's dominated by agribusiness, dominated by a few big landowners. What does exist is becoming increasingly automated, and what is produced cheaply to be sold to the American masses, a lot of it comes from other overseas countries. So this is the reality here, that the deindustrialization of America, the ruination of American agriculture via monopolization of the land, and the production of a lot of American food, or a lot of food that's sold in America elsewhere. All of these are the inevitable outcomes of the developments of American capitalism. Tucker Carlson, of course, will not go near that. He conjured up images of 1950s America, New Deal America, but of course, without ever going near the reasons why that became a thing in the first place. So, point 4, Tucker Carlson wants America to be beautiful again, apparently. He stated that urban planners have deliberately uglified American cities, and goes on a bit of a rant about how American cities are ugly due to brutalist architecture, graffiti, public drug use, and violent crime, and says that these are all deliberate attacks on the public. I have to laugh at the American right-wing obsession with like slagging off brutalist architecture, a style that I very much admire myself. But American right-wingers are just obsessed with it. They think that it's the reason why everything's gone bad. Is really is a cipher for social control, though. The problem for America isn't that the problem here, according to Carlson, isn't that American cities have been made unaffordable to the working class, that public housing has drastically reduced, the mental health services are defunded, that the opioid epidemic was engineered by the ruling class themselves. The problem for people like Carlson is that the poor are visible. Their suffering is unsightly. This is the politics of an aesthetic form of fascism. not the swastika and the torch burning variety, but the genteel suburban variant that wants the consequences, the human consequences of American capitalism and its degeneration swept out of sight, and cities sanitized in order to support the property prices. That's what Tucker Carlson's real concern is here. Point five: a healthy America. Carlson embraces the RFK Jr. Food agenda, which used to be referred to as MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, because there's nobody who's a real better representation of a healthy country than President Donald Trump, a man perpetually sweating burger grease into his powdered dome of hair. Carlson said, and there's some legitimacy to this point, that through Xanax, Adderall, and SSRIs, Americans have been left half-addled. Yes, there's some legitimate critique to be made here about the pharmaceutical industry's running of the American healthcare system, about the pathologization and the medicalization of ordinary human feelings of distress under capitalism, about the fact that the United States consumes the overwhelming majority of the world's prescription opioids. But Carlson isn't making a structural critique here. He's making a moral one. The problem for Carlson is really about individual weakness, individual vice, individual failure to be sober in a society which is designed to make you drugged up, numb, and dumb, of course. Now, Carlson doesn't really get away from his origins as a sort of Reagan Republican figure. For him, the individual responsibility element is all. Now, point six: honesty. Carlson says that government officials should be punished for lying to citizens, and most classified records, including on the JFK assassination and 9/11, should be opened. Now, this is again, itself is a smoke and mirrors trick, because he's promising that if we can just open the files, if we can just open the JFK files, if we can just open the 9/11 files or the Epstein files, if we can just know what really goes on in the smoke-filled rooms, then everything would change. But whereas capitalists do operate through many secret conspiracies, and constantly conspire to do various different things, most of their system, though, operates out in the open. There's no horror greater, really, than the normal functioning of the market, the normal functioning of the state and the ideological apparatus. The horror of capitalism isn't that it's hidden, it's that it's visible, brutal, and, of course, entirely legal. And Carlson wants you to believe that there's a way of running the system that will make all of the officials be more honest. Wouldn't make a blind bit of difference. By the way, most of any files that are in the JFK collection or the 9/11 collection or the Epstein collection that could have seriously implicated anybody who's still alive, all those files will have been destroyed. I mean, this is the thing. Like, Trump keeps saying, the point is, like, any file that said Alan Dulles did it, or it was the Cubans or something, anything with any amount of information written down that could actually give you an outline of the plot won't be in those files. The most likely outcome is that any such files have already been destroyed. Same for 9/11, because you can open up the official government files on this, but the people who did both of those things, both of those events that were conspiracies and were carried out by a certain clique within the American ruling class and the American officialdom, these were people who might have had a foothold in official agencies. Indeed, they probably did, but were acting as a clique both within and without the American governmental agencies, and won't exactly have kept records of what they did. So anything incriminating will have long since gone, or if it ever existed in the first place. So, point 7. Carlson thinks everybody should be more optimistic. He argues that having children is a biological imperative. Well, I agree with him on that point. That the foundation of long-term thinking. While blaming aging and childless elites for policies that disregard future generations. This is a particular obsession of right-wingers, the idea that it's, those childless elites. Well, let's just go back through the last few American presidents, shall we? Trump has children, a fair number that he's acknowledged. Biden had children. Obama had children. Bush had children. Bill Clinton had a daughter. George H.W. Bush had children. One of them was president. Reagan had children. Jimmy Carter did. Gerald Ford did. Nixon did. Johnson did. Kennedy did. Eisenhower did. Truman did. Eisenhower did. I know there's more to it than the president, but the head of state has always been a married man who has at least one child. So, the childless elites thing, there are some people in the political system, of course, who don't have children. Most of the senators and the congressmen in the American system are people who are married and have children. The reason why the likes of, gay for war Lindsey Graham stood out was because he was one of the few who didn't. But this is one of the obsession of the American reactionaries. Basically, this is like great replacement theory all over again, but just dressed up more. The same optimism that Carlson talks about, that worries about falling birth rates among the right kind of Americans, the same demographic panic that's animated various white nationalist movements for a century now. This is what Carlson is talking about. He's promoted great replacement theory across many episodes of his current show and his old Fox News show. And this is something that's, of course, been cited in the manifestos of various different fascist organizations. When he talks about childless elites, he's not talking about the ruling class as a whole, as I've just established, or their functionaries. What he's talking about is that there's not enough white children being born. That's what he's talking about. And again, this is coded, this is dressed up. He's quite careful not to say it, but that's what he's really talking about. Because Tucker Carlson is in essence, is an American fascist. Now, I know that leftists have devalued that word by screaming it at everybody for years, but I've been watching Carlson's programs for a long time, and the man's always been a deeply, deeply reactionary individual who's aligned with certain aspects of the American state, but he's always been adjacent to fascism. And this is him moving more out into the open with fascism. Now, just to pause here briefly and talk about what fascism is ultimately. Fascism, when it's in campaign mode, shall we say, when it's recruiting, doesn't come out and say, we will brutally crush the living standards of the workers in order to restore profitability to American capital. That's not what fascists say. Some of them might even believe that they are actually doing some sort of national revolution or some such bullshit. But fascism always runs as a criticism, as a rejection of certain elements of the current status quo. Now, this is what this is. This is an attempt to draw in oppositional energy and channel it in a deeply reactionary direction. Now, in his 8th point, he wants America to be wise. Schools should teach how the physical world actually works and what he calls unchanging facts about human nature rather than credentials, screens, and technological fads. Now, the problem with American education is not unique to America. It's a problem of education under capitalism, which is that the American education system isn't designed according to the wants of a gender studies professor. Or, I mean, you get some rather silly American teachers putting some rather silly nonsense in their classrooms, of course. But the American education system is designed with the American employment market in mind. To quote, or to use one of my favorite quotes from George Carlin, which is they want people who are just smart enough to press the buttons and just dumb enough not to realize that they're getting fucked over every day. And that's the design of the American education system. It's not designed to promote homosexuality or transgenderism or polyamory or whatever the fuck the obsession of the right wing is at the moment. It's designed to deliver people into the American employment market. That's what it's designed to do. And if it's inadequate and if it doesn't enable the full development of the talents of the individual child, because the American employers have no interest in that. Again, they want people who are just smart enough to do a few specific things. They don't want your intellectual capacities fully developed because you might start to realize a few things. But is Tucker Carlson going to talk about that? No, he's going to give you the classic right-wing distraction politics, which is, the schools have been taken over by gender ideology and the schools have been taken over by mad academics. No, the schools are dominated by the demands of the American employers. It begins and ends there. It's the same in every country. And that's why the American education is garbage. That's why the teaching standards are low. That's why the public school system is regarded as terrible, because that's what it's designed to be like. The employers are getting what they want out of it, essentially, which is a piss poor system which does not develop the talents of the working class because it's not supposed to. It's not supposed to produce fully rounded individuals who understand the world. It's supposed to produce people who are like 1/16 as intelligent as they should be, essentially. America should be decent, is his point 9. The US should apologize and pay restitution for killing non-combatants. Well, if they did that, they'd be paying out an awful lot. Reverse Trump's Department of War rebrand and stop funding allies that commit what Carlson refers to as genocide, and he cites Israel. Now, the point about this is that, again, like, he's acknowledging something, which is going in the form of the actions of the state of Israel being genocidal, that is going to draw in some popularity from disenchanted left-wingers, from disenchanted MAGA people. And that the reason why he's done this is because his role is to hoover up the discontent coming from MAGA and channel it back into the Republican Party again. And you can't do that without addressing these people's anger over what they correctly regard as Trump's betrayal over the war. Now, he can't say it was a betrayal you didn't see coming, though, because it's Donald fucking Trump. He's not exactly subtle. Now, point 10. Carlson wants America to be united. He calls for halting immigration until the effects of AI become clearer. Well, it's funny because Carlson and people like him were calling for a halt on immigration long before AI came along. End benefits for undocumented migrants and making English the sole language of federal documents and ballots. Now, so united in this sense doesn't actually mean united. It means excluding quite a lot of people. It means linguistic purification or attempts at it. United by closing the borders. Well, of course, the ruling class continues to exploit immigrant labor through the H-1B visa system, the agricultural guest worker programs, and the undocumented economy that American capital depends on. This isn't unity, it's the forced homogeneity of a declining empire run by elites who are terrified of demographic change. Now, what this is, again, this is the reflection of the petty bourgeois base that produced the 2016 version of Trump. It's designed to capture the people who actually believed that Trump was going to do any of the stuff that he committed to 10 years ago. And it's designed to gather them up behind Carlson, who many of them will have been watching on YouTube for many, many years, and get them ready to be pushed back into voting for, campaigning for the Republican Party again. That's the purpose of this manifesto. The purpose of this group Carlson has formed will be ultimately to endorse J.D. Vance. That's exactly where this is going. It will be that he will denounce the Republican Party for a while, but ultimately then he'll turn around and say, do you know that Gavin Newsom or whoever the fuck the Democrats decide to nominate in the end, or decide to stitch up in the nomination for in the end? Carlson will say, did you know that Gavin Newsom, when he was governor of California, made transgenderism compulsory? And that's why we all have to get behind J.D. Vance now, because he's a good Christian man and only he can be the version of MAGA that Donald Trump was meant to be but was never capable of being. And this is the reality. He will gather the discontents up. He'll take them back to the Republican Party again. And that's Tucker Carlson's role. And again, like, he gets to say things that are partially true in doing so, which is why he gets an audience. But his role ultimately is to lead people back into the Republican Party. Just as Bernie Sanders, the independent, his role is to make a lot of noise, say, oh, I want to tax the billionaires more. His role is to say things like that, then get you to vote Democrat. Just like Bernie's role in the 90s was to say, this NAFTA, it's terrible. My God, we got to defeat it. Vote for Bill Clinton, because Bob Dole is a fascist. This is the nature of the political system. The nature of the American political system is designed to institutionalize two parties over and above everything else. And those two parties have been designed to specifically service the requirements of the ruling class, have done for many, many years. And the point about third parties is that the whole system is rigged against them. It's not meant to provide a way through for third parties. Now, Tucker Carlson knows that very well, and so this rebranding operation is going to be for ultimately the Republican Party, because that's the only place that this is going. So nobody who regards themselves as being on the left in any way, no matter how much you hate the organized institutional left in the United States, should fall for any of this nonsense. Really, it's transparent. It's a transparent tissue of absolute petty bourgeois nonsense. There's occasionally something true in there, which is designed to draw people in, but ultimately it's a con job. It's the kind of like limited hangout, shall we say, which is to acknowledge certain truths in order to hide bigger ones, which is exactly what Carlson is doing here. So I'm just going to go back through the chat here just to say hello. So hello to Cherry Cupcake from London, Motor Jason, Jonathan from Canada, Brolin from Seattle, Jesse Johansson. Motor Jason is in Las Vegas, Nevada. Hello to George Stocco in London, Alex Oliveira from Brazil, Dave Puxley 7387 from Quisling, Canada, ACDT. So Tucker is pulling a Farage. Effectively, yes. Though he's a little bit more, I think he's a little bit smarter than old Nigel. Nigel, by the way, is finished. He will probably hang on to his seat because the only person challenging him with any kind of name recognition is a man who calls himself Count Binface and dresses as Darth Vader with a large dustbin on his head. If he wins, it would be hilarious, but I don't think he will. But Farage and Reform are done. They're cooked. As are Rupert Lowe and Restore. You've seen even the Daily Telegraph denouncing both of them recently. meaning that the ruling class has decided to pull time on this. They don't want and don't need at the moment Nigel's collection of nutters in Downing Street and in charge of Parliament. They don't want that. They want Nigel to fuck off and retire quietly, and they would like, ideally, the Reform lot, Rupert Lowe's lot, and the Tories to all merge together, or for the Tories to swallow both of them. Now, will that happen? Maybe not not quickly, but certainly Farage is fatally damaged by the party funding scandal and his relationship with various different dubious millionaires and billionaires. So time has been called on old Nigel. He needs to go and spend more time with his ale. Hello to Svetlana in Sydney. Brolin says Tucker Carlson's family is the largest private real estate owner in the state of California. That is interesting. I did not know that. So take it his own family is going to be leading the way with the revival of farming then. President Jesus says Chomsky. Okay. Who else we got here? President Jesus says the Carlson beautification plan will consist of making every structure look like a log cabin from the show Yellowstone. Yeah, I mean, I hate to go there, but like the aesthetic obsession of not just like Carlson, but like people like Matt Walsh, with like sort of rustic log cabin stuff. Like obviously these are, I think it is in Carlson's case, it is his house. In Walsh's case, it's a set. But this is their obsession, this sort of rusticated look. I think they all think of themselves, they all want to think of themselves, and this is why they all love the show Yellowstone. They all want to think of themselves as Kevin Costner in that show. I'm just a rancher. I'm a man who lives off the land. I'm a man who respects the land. I'm a man who's not above shooting an Injun every now and again if he gets on my land. And that's what I tell the local sheriff when he comes a-calling. And they all see themselves that way. They all want to be seen as like this sort of rugged backwoods men, but in a very well, modern, in a very well built cabin with all the modern accoutrements inside of it and lots of guns. There's nothing more insecure about his masculinity. Nobody more insecure about his masculinity than the sort of soft boy right wingers, and they're all soft boys right wingers, really. Especially the sort of right wing intellectual types. You ever taken a look at a picture of Curtis Yarvin? You ever see how like what an absolute little craven pussy that man must be? You ever taken a look at like the shape of Elon Musk? The man looks like an upside down lasagna, or what's his name, Richard Hanania, or any of these like right wing characters who's always obsessed with sort of rural, rugged, rustic stuff, and they're all like these absolute like soy boy weaklings who like couldn't split a log with an axe if their lives depended upon it. Whereas you can if you follow the Alexander Lukashenko method. If you ever seen the Lukashenko method of like splitting a log, because he was a farmer, like he did this video where he's out like just testing axes out in this like farming show, and he just lightly swings the axe and like splits the log, because then he talks about it and he says, well, I just find the weak point on the wood and I tap it lightly with the axe and it goes and it splits in two. You don't need to like swing it over your head and leather it down. If you're experienced enough, you know exactly where to hit the wood with a relatively small amount of force, and then you split the wood. But yeah, all of the right-wing characters have always been the same, going back like over a century. They're always like these screaming, over-the-top figures who are quite physically weak, who feel very inadequate and have become obsessed with strength as a result. Can name your person, Hitler, all the issues that guy had, Franco, same thing. You get a lot of and also like you also get people like Gabriele D'Annunzio, the Italian poet and sort of proto-fascist type. It's all these like very sort of weedy soft boys who want to be hard men. So go spend all their time going on and on about strength, and desperately trying to be not the sort of a soft city boys that they are, soft bourgeois city boys that they actually are. It's a consistent thing with like right wing politics. No, not that there aren't consistently annoying and irritating trends in left wing politics as well, mind you. Right. Broly says Carlson has libertarian leanings. Periodically, depends which version of Tucker Carlson's turned up, really. I would say, but also bear in mind, here I'll just go on a bit of a digression into Marxist state theory. Libertarianism is ultimately a step on the road to fascism, if actually implemented. If the libertarian demand, which is either for, as Ron Paul liked to say, or still does like to say, he's a fan of Thomas Jefferson's government is best, is that which governs least. And some libertarians want to claim that they want to see the complete abolition of the state. But if you completely abolish the state and somehow, do this thought experiment for a minute. If you completely abolish the state and retained capitalism, the state would re-emerge again. They just call it something else, because the state is the product of irreconcilable class contradictions. So if a libertarian is going to try and do away with the state, all he's going to end up with is privatizing it. And there was plenty of people who were the libertarian tendencies, shall we say, who ended up backing the failed Austrian watercolor artist. Because what better way to implement the libertarian dream, which is ultimately sort of an extreme version of the bourgeois dream, than to free the bourgeois from state control entirely. Dimitri Chinish says, Trump said that the people of Venezuela love him. He's going to be their president after he's fixed America. He's not going to do any of these things. Like this idea, Trump like puts a hat on saying, Trump 2020. By the looks of it, he's not going to be awake in 2028. He might not even be alive. I mean, he's on the same level as Biden. So no, he's not going to do anything when it comes down to it. He's going to go away and try and evade whatever legal cases the Democrats try and send his way if they win. And that's going to be it. That's how it's going to end, with nothing. That's as it always was going to. Just like he left in 2020, 2021. He left after he inspired a riot, sold those people out like that, and then just left. And the same thing's going to happen the next time, but with even less going on. He's not even going to inspire a riot with the assistance of the FBI this time round. He's just going to go. That's going to be it. And everyone's going to wonder, well, where all the noise went. ACDT says American victim mentality is truly something. Yes, and that runs all the way through. It's Americans' petty bourgeois victim mentality. The same with Trump when he didn't invent this. Like this was a thing in Britain over 100 years ago. Same with Trump when he used to say they're ripping us off so badly. These countries like Germany, France, they're all ripping us off. They're not spending enough on defense, leaving it all to America. Well, this is the party's over, everybody. You got to spend more money. You got to buy more stuff. But that's very similar to like the "oh woe is us" crap used to get from the British in the 1890s about how the empire cost too much, India costs too much. We should get rid of it because it doesn't make us enough money, or we've given too much to it. Which really is a sick, depraved joke. Whether it's the British talking about India or Trump talking about the Middle East, we've given them too much. I'm telling you now, we should just drop the bomb and get out. When you consider all the horrors and miseries that the United States and its imperialist allies have inflicted upon the West Asia, to see them turn around and start whining about how much money it's cost them is like absolutely ridiculous. You are free to do as we tell you, says, like McGregor, Mearsheimer, Tucker is a China hawk. Yeah. A lot of these, I mean, all these characters are. I mean, when it comes down to it, many of them objected to the Ukraine war because they thought it was the wrong war. They wanted a war with China. So the same is true for Mearsheimer, McGregor, etc., and Carlson's the same. These people, what animates them more than anything else is, well, war with China or potential like takeover / temporary military occupation of Mexico. Seems to be the thing that really gets McGregor going more than anything else, is the idea of launching military operations into Mexico. We know that the Democrats were keen on that as well. We know that old Pete Buttigieg was keen on that. We know that Marco Rubio is probably keen on that as well. We'll return to this subject in future programs. But a lot of this is just like a disagreement over tactics. Like a lot of the Tucker Carlson people want their wars to be local in the Latin Americas and the Caribbean. That's what they want. They think that like going into Ukraine or spending money on Ukraine is a waste when they could be taking over and controlling Central and South America and the Caribbean. Not good if you live in those places. President Jesus says Ryan Grimm loved this point in the plan. Just do an FDR. Well, Ryan Grimm loves that hairpiece on his head, so his judgment is very questionable. All you've got to do to get like the Ryan Grimms of the world would applaud literally Mussolini's ghost if he turned up and proposed like the fascist corporation model. Where if someone went on the drop site news and says, well, you know what, Ryan, what we've decided to do more than anything else, the thing that America has suffered from is an excess of class conflict. So we're going to build these things called corporations, not that kind, where all of America is unified together in pursuit of a common aim, and there's no more conflict between labor and capital anymore, Ryan. And Ryan Grimm and Jimmy Dore and maybe the Jew dissidents clowns would all sit there and go, how marvelous is that? Oh, the greedy CEOs will be restrained by the representatives of the workers, and everybody will pull together for America. Honestly, you could read from Mussolini's fascist encyclopedia on some of these fucking online news shows. You could even say, as FDR once said, Ryan or Jimmy, if we all come together and march forward under one banner with one leader and with one focus to our anger, there can be no stopping the forward march of the American people. And the so-called independent media clowns would all just applaud. It'd be marvelous. You could describe classical fascism to these people as long as you took the F word out of it and you didn't say anything too racist. A lot of talk about unity, overcoming division, etc. You could take that, which is, by the way, what Tucker Carlson's doing, and you could throw it into so-called independent media, and these fucking dummies would hoover it up like a big bowl of shit. Because that's what they're there to do. Potted Rodent says Netanyahu's owners simply expect to return on their investment. Well, that's true. Tucker wears a red bracelet, says Derek. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. Bill wears a red dress. That's something I don't want to think about. 15-minute cities too, another one of their obsessions. Well, the thing is, like, we used to have like 15-minute cities in some communities because you could reach everything that you needed in 15 minutes. You could reach a doctor's surgery, a dentist surgery, you could reach a pharmacy, you could reach a shop, you could reach a library, all within 15 minutes. Actually, where I live, yeah, you can. You can do all that inside 15 minutes. You can get everything you need taken care of inside 15 minutes. It's not a bad idea. The problem with like 15-minute cities as implemented by the likes of like the English Green Party, if they get a chance to do it, or the Scottish Greens, is that what it does is it turns from being something which is about putting services into local communities into something which is about zoning laws and rerouting traffic away so that poorer working class areas end up isolated and not able to access services. Like everything else, like in a time of profound reaction, with the power of the ruling classes rampant, ideas that might have some kind of a progressive element to them just get turned into their opposite when they get fed into the policy system. Uh, they think Soviet blocs are depressing, says Alex Olivero. Yeah, well, you go and look at like the history of brutalist architecture. Um, there's a lot of really inspiring like buildings in there. Some of I mean, I don't find the Soviet flats any less depressing than like the British equivalents. I mean, there is an argument to be had about the Soviet flats and like the fact that Khrushchev went with a design from a French architect ultimately, but the Soviet blocs got everybody a home. In fairness, um, and they cleared out like the inferior quality homes. They housed the people, so there's that to them, and which is superior to what you have in the West now, which is nothing. um, but I've always wondered why people find like the Soviet flats to be depressing. Now, admittedly, there's probably flaws to them. Undoubtedly, there is. But why is a like a well designed like apartment workers apartment depressing? Because I've lived in some like blocks that were, when I was earning more money, quite expensive, and they were terrifically depressing, poorly built. The walls would like wobble if you leant on them too hard, and that you're paying through the fucking nose for it. I'd much rather have like a solidly built like Soviet style apartment that were the I mean and of course the reason why many workers in the former Soviet states and Eastern Europe actually own their homes is that they moved into them and took them on as their own property in the end, and that's why you have such high rates of home ownership, because they were built and given to the workers, and the workers had to pay a very minimal amount for them, if anything at all. So, I mean, what's depressing about them really, is that like it is an architectural and cultural thing, which is that the brutalist architecture was really about portraying a vision of the future, a vision of the future freed from a lot of the architectural styles of the past. There's a reason why like right wingers are obsessed with like Doric arches, Greco-Roman columns, etc. It's because they're all obsessed with this idea of like the great defense of Western civilization. Whereas to me, brutalist architecture is about going beyond that legacy, and it is a bold vision of the future of design, and to me that's inspiring because it shows the how creative humans can be. Now, does all of it work? Probably not, but certainly I think that if you look at like the Yugoslav brutalism, there's some terrifically uh, beautiful designs there in some of the sort of modernist brutalist buildings. Right down in the Soviet case, right down to the bus stops of like Kazakhstan and places like that. Really interesting, architecturally rich things being built. What these fucking right wingers would do would have like everything. They have the same like decrepit imagination as their icon, the Austrian watercolor artist. Like, oh, I want everything to look like everything with like Greco-Roman marble columns, everything with magnificent arches. We'll have nude men on every statue, of lots of muscle-bound dudes. Not that we're gay or anything. We're going to have like a sort of Mediterranean Greco-Roman megastructures everywhere. Fucking dull as shit. Dull, 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 tedious. Give me brutalism any day of the week. Much more interesting. It's about reaching into the future. It's about overcoming the past. But of course, like reactionaries are all about, they're stuck in an imaginary past, which is what like your standard fascist is. He's stuck in an imaginary past. Right. Abolish NATO says due dissidence was going off again last night about why people should support progressive Democrats. Well, there you go. That's what happens when you refuse to learn anything. Dimitri says we have the most honest president in the American society. They all do it. They all do atrocities openly and brag about it. So this point is checked. Yeah, he's the most honest man to hold the presidency in that respect, certainly. Bobby Allen says Trump would never be Chancellor of Germany in 1,000 lifetimes. Well, he's saying that Friedrich Merz isn't going to be replaced by a German version of Trump. Is there a German version of Trump? I mean, is the woman from the AfD going to do it? Well, probably not. Even the AfD don't really have a Trump type character in them. 20 years of schooling and they put you in an Uber car. Good adaptation. J.D. Vance, the Harvard hillbilly. Yes. How many names has J.D. Vance had, by the way? Diogenes Parhaisati says, in those days when Sanders advocated the destruction of Yugoslavia, yes, indeed he did. Just as he's backed, I think, every war, all the wars on Yugoslavia, the occupation of Afghanistan, the war on Russia, the war on Libya, the war in Syria, he's backed all of them. Because Bernie Sanders is a loyal servant of the American imperialism. Came out of Spaceballs. Spaceballs. One of Mel Brooks's finest works. Has Nick Griffin died? Don't think so. Not sure. Bin face for PM. Doubt he'll make it, but it would be funny if Nigel lost to him. Elon is built like a half-squeezed toothpaste tube. Yeah, you'd think a man with that much money could like get some kind of like surgical trick done so you don't look like an exploded lasagna. Apparently not, though. Caustic Grip says Hanania looks like he died years ago, was cremated, then makeup applied to his face. He's a very strange looking man. I mean, I don't usually go in for like the personal comments, but like they do. So like, if you're gonna live by the bullshit, die by the bullshit. Like all of these guys just look like you could like flick them on the. You could go up behind Richard Hanania. You could flick him on. You could flick him in the back of his ear. Did you ever do that at school? Like when I was a kid, and it was winter time. Like you would try and get your hat on really quickly because it was very, very cold in the winter. Because if you didn't, then somebody would run up behind you if your hat was off and your ears were cold, and they would flick you hard on the back on like the skin of your ear, and it would hurt like fuck. I reckon if you did that to Richard Hanania, he would burst into tears. And you wouldn't even have to wait for it to be winter. You could do it now. If you see him on the street, you could do it now. Not encouraging this behavior, by the way. He'd probably have you fucking shot by his like Mossad bodyguards or something. But if you flicked his ear, he'd burst into tears. Same with Curtis Yarvin. Like if you flicked Curtis Yarvin on the earlobe, he'd probably soil himself. He'd probably burst into tears. He'd probably like get his private security goons to, I don't know, tie you to a chair, weight you down with copies of his book, and throw you in the Hudson or something. What else do we have here? President Jesus says the secret success of Yellowstone is playing on the anxiety of the landowner that someone is always trying to steal their land. Yeah, true. Anton Stamfel says Carlson is just the consequence of Anglo-American imperialism. He is an empty vessel with no morality. He has no interest in the exploitation of the majority. He says nothing about the indigenous peoples. Yeah. Motor Jason says cannot fucking stand Doug McGregor. Well, I mean, I'm amazed that he's still going on all these podcasts and just saying the same thing over and over again. Like he's been saying the same thing over and over again for like 4 fucking years. And like you still get like Glenn Deason just sitting there very sincerely in one of the 8 podcasts he releases a day with like former American officials, all of whom say, "Well, I think the war is a bad idea, Glenn. We're in trouble. I think that Israel and Mr. Netanyahu have done us a severe disservice. Our president has lied to the American people. We are running out of missiles. Europe is being invaded by hordes and hordes of Muslims. They are being replaced. England is about to undergo a race war. And we're talking about fighting Russia. It makes no sense, Glenn." And Glenn Deason sits there and goes, yes, Colonel McGregor, very good. Yes. Now, what do you think about what the Trump administration is planning? Well, I think that President Trump should prioritize our own border. He should prioritize getting control of this failed state of Mexico and taking out the cartels who are smuggling suicide bombers dosed up on goofballs over the border. Same interview done every week for 4 years, and it doesn't matter whether it's Glenn Deason like looking very serious or Judge Napolitano or whoever. They all sit there and they say, "Oh, fascinating, Colonel. Tell us more about how Hezbollah, the Mexican drug cartels, and I don't know, George Soros are working together to flood America with transgender crackheads. Tell us more, Colonel. Share with us your wisdom, sir." It's such a fucking laugh. Honestly, my life is so much fucking easier now I don't listen to any of that anymore. Fucking buckets of tripe, all of it, Dmitry Shanish says, "We had libertarian system in Russia in the 90s. Gangs, redistribution of property by violence, absolute misery for the former Soviet people until state stepped in to institutionalize the results," which is a good point. Putin didn't reverse the results. The state institutionalized and legalized the results. There's the difference. Soviet bus stops looked amazing. Yeah, British ones don't. Trust me. Don't forget the Grenfell disaster, says Ben Horst. Very, very true. Brolin says, Jeffrey Sachs, the economist, was a promoter of that misery. Indeed he was. Another one who's on like the multipolar shit bucket muncher circuit, who like certain people can't get enough of. There you go. Jean Franco says a 50-minute city used to be just businesses and homes for local and regional areas. Yeah, it just used to mean communities with all the relevant amenities in them. That's it. Nothing more complicated than that. Caustic Grip says, I genuinely hate Hannah Arendt. Yeah, well, anybody who writes about totalitarianism and and at the same time is like a lifelong admirer of Martin Heidegger, an unrepentant Nazi, is missing something, I think. It's almost as if the totalitarian had him. Funny that. No, everyone on the Judging Freedom channel, like most of them, and you get some interesting people on there. You get like Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal have interesting things to say. It's just most of like the ex generals and the ex intelligence officials. If you listen to them, they're not telling you anything you couldn't get just off reading through like half a dozen translated Russian Telegram channels. You listen to them, Like, what I found was like, well, I know all this, and because I've read the same Telegram channels you have. You're just literally there because you used to be in like the CIA or the National Security Council or something, and you sound very official. But I've just read all the same information that you did this morning. It's just like it's a fucking grift. Um, Dimitri says Soviet flats were fine. One speaker I heard another day pointed out that Soviet people spent much more time out of their homes because they had a lot of social activities, sport, amateur theatre, etc. Yeah. Alex Oliveira says, and so many projects weren't built in the Soviet Union due to World War II. It was a shame because they were amazing. Yeah. If you look at the early plans for like workers' housing from the 5-year plan, Stalin era, there were some incredibly ornate buildings that were planned. Again, thanks to the war, it never came to pass. Nick Griffin's still alive. Thank God for that. In one of those podcasts, McGregor had a bust of Wagner behind him. Sometime at the time he had Napoleon. Fuck me. I have. If you can't see because of the light, that's Engels behind me. Much superior. I'm surprised he doesn't have the full collection. I mean, Napoleon's a bit too radical. I mean, I'm surprised he doesn't have Louis XVI, Napoleon III, Bismarck, Wagner, Nietzsche. Oh, God. John Franco says, but these guests, referring to the Judge Napolitano crew, were all in the room making horrific decisions in the past. Correct. If they were there today, they would be no different from our leaders today. Correct. Entirely right. So bear that in mind next time you listen to one of these guys. They'd be doing all the same thing now and saying, yes, sir, Mr. President, if Trump was to employ them. Edward says, in none of the states where socialism collapsed did they come close to restoring socialism. Why? Edward, that's a huge question. I will try and treat it as honestly as I can in a relatively short amount of time. Putting it simply as I can. When the Soviet Union collapsed, it was already the case that the working class in all of the nations that made up the Soviet Union had already lost its sense of itself. Like they hadn't gone fully back into a class in itself. It wasn't the proletariat that it needed to be in terms of an advanced consciousness that would be ready to assume the governance of society. That's not what happened. What the class consciousness in the Soviet Union had already been severely eroded in the Khrushchev revisionist period and the Brezhnev period, which is why, and by the way, as part of that, the role of the working class in the CPSU went down and down and down. More and more people within the elected positions of the state and the senior positions of the party, more and more of them were second and third generation bureaucrats, the sons and daughters of bureaucrats. There were less and less, there were fewer and fewer workers taken from like the factory floor or the mine or the shipyard or the field, occupying crucial positions. The Soviet leadership actively worked to dilute class consciousness. The Soviet leadership, for many decades, actively worked to depoliticize the working class. That's the reality. So when you ask why has socialism not been restored, there's two parts to the answer I can give you. One, what collapsed in 1991 wasn't socialism. They hadn't reached it yet. It was to go back to like what Marx and Engels and Lenin said about the transition to socialism. No matter what Khrushchev or Brezhnev claimed about, we're already at socialism, communism's around the corner, we're at developed socialism or whatever. you had what you had there was a transitional society. It wasn't capitalist, but it wasn't socialist yet. It had gone a certain way towards socialism, but it wasn't there yet. And so that's what collapsed in 1991, and it collapsed because the level. Well, this is part of the reason. The working class had been comprehensively depoliticized, so that when the working class did act, they were misled by initially Gorbachev and then by Yeltsin, who actually got a lot of working class votes because, well, Yeltsin just said anything to any particular audience, depending upon what they wanted to hear. Oh, well, workers, your wages will go up. You know, you want to own property, you can own loads of property. You know, it will the capitalist for restored capitalism in Russia will be all things to all men. You know, turned out it was all things to a very small number of men. Um, so my point about this, Edward, to go back to answering your question, because there's no socialism to restore. You lost a transitional society that had gone a certain way towards socialism, and then it had got stuck. It had got stuck at a certain point, and then it went backwards, and then it collapsed. And the level of confusion and division and lack of class consciousness that was already there in the late period Soviet Union then went through the ringer of the 90s period in Russia, and in, well, Ukraine it was even worse, and Baltic states even worse. I'm not as well up on the history of the Central Asian republics, but the point is that when you already had a distorted and increasingly deformed class consciousness or lack of class consciousness when the Soviet Union collapsed, you then have all the confusion and the horrors of the 1990s. You then have Putinism and essentially like basically having state control over the trade union movement. You have a major opposition party in the form of the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, which is basically social democratic. It's not revolutionary. It's certainly not Leninist in any real respect. I think a lot of the things they write are interesting, but it's an institutional opposition party led by like old Brezhnevite cadre. It's not a militant party of the working class. Now there are smaller parties who aspire to be a militant party of the Russian working class. I believe that like Professor Popov's group is trying to do that. So the point is, I mean, here I'm mainly referring to Russia. Ukraine's got its own problems, but here I'm mainly referring to Russia. You put all that together, and it's no wonder it's no wonder like the Soviet system or some version of it hasn't been restored. Because, well, where's the leadership? I think I mean, I'm not having to go at you, Edward, in particular, but like, I think that like a lot of people, when you ask the question, like, why hasn't the working class done this? Why hasn't the working class done that? Do not assume that a certain amount of immiseration will lead to socialism. It might not. Don't assume that if the working class just gets poor enough, that there will be a reversion to the Soviet system or something like that. And I know that, you know, this is it's a tempting thought to have, because we've all had it. That if the situation just gets bad enough, everybody will wake up and everybody will see how horrible it is. That's not how it works. I mean, one of the great lessons like you get from reading Marx and Engels and Lenin is that the the turning of trade union consciousness into revolutionary consciousness is exceptionally hard work, because like trade union consciousness does develop. If you There's plenty of like industrial disputes and the sort and the like in Russia at the moment and in other former Soviet states. Most of these get shut down by the state or settled via various means very quickly because the state really realizes the danger of these things if they grow. And so there's never any, to my mind, serious leadership there. The Communist Party of the Russian Federation has no interest leading a class struggle. Has no interest now when it's in the middle of the special military operation. It had no real interest in leading one beforehand either. What they want is mild reforms within the existing system. In truth, that's what they want. So where's the revolutionary leadership? Where's the leadership in any of the former Soviet states or any of the people's democracies that's going to go out there and push for a return to the socialist path, shall we say? Now, I know that small parties do exist in each of these countries who are trying to do that, and you have to salute the comrades who are trying to do that under very difficult circumstances. But it's going to take more than we're a generation away from the collapse. And it'll take a long time to undo all the problems, all the confusion, all of the misunderstandings of the past in order to advance. And that's unfortunate, and it's bitterly frustrating to live through, but that's the unfortunate reality. Gianfranco says, Ukraine has its own problems, the understatement of the life and works of Alex. Well, I've talked more than enough times about Ukraine's problems, but I get your point. Alex de Oliveira says accelerationism. Yes, indeed. That's the accelerationist point of view is dumb, basically. Things just get bad enough, they're bound to turn to us eventually, said every fool in politics ever. Right. Non-Zenzi says, not automatically, naturally, there needs to be active Marxist-Leninist education organization. There are pockets of Marxism-Leninism in Eastern Europe and possibly in the underground or in hiding. How well organized, don't know. Well, I aim to find out more. I know that there will be some people working very hard towards that end, and certainly those people should be supported. Leader of the KPRF, Zugadov, said that Russia is over the limits for revolutions. Well, he probably thought that when he was a Soviet official as well. Bear in mind, Zuganov, correct me if I'm wrong about this, any Russians watching, Zuganov was an early supporter of Gorbachev. He turned on him in the end, but he was in the officialdom, and he was a bureaucrat, and he was a supporter of Gorbachev initially. A lot of people in the KPRF would have been. Don't like to talk about it now, of course. Okay, right. So let's see how many we got here. We have over 600 people tuning in. Excellent stuff. I should do this again at this time. Right. So thank you to everybody who's tuned in tonight. An audio recording of this show will be up on the Patreon site tomorrow. As I said, courses on Marxist theory of the state and Marxist economic works coming up on Patreon also this week. More Decline and Fall coming to you this week as well, so keep an eye out for that. You can find recent clips from the most recent Decline and Fall show on our Substack page, and you will be able to find the Marxist economics and state theory courses on the Substack page and the Patreon page as well. Thanks to everybody who's tuned in tonight. Thanks to everybody who supports the show on Patreon, on Substack. I've been Alex, you've been the audience, and I will see